Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection, review it, and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. The Switch era really downplayed Nintendo's use of Miis. These once iconic avatars were everywhere when they first made their debut on the Wii back in 2006, and remained an integral part of Nintendo's systems and brand up until the end of the Wii U in 2017. While they initially functioned primarily as profile icons and for use in the console-bundled Wii Sports, they would become popular enough to continue making playable appearances in several major releases, and eventually earn a handful of their own Mii-focused experiences. The Miis haven't been fully retired yet. The Switch still has the Mii Maker, and they remain playable in a handful of releases, like Smash Ultimate and Mario Kart 8. But it definitely feels like the Switch has started to sunset these quirky avatars, if not at least put them in the backseat for this console generation. That's not to say they've totally lost the spotlight. In February of 2021, Nintendo announced the Switch would be receiving a port of Miitopia, an RPG released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2016. Miitopia starred the Miis as, well, everyone. From the townspeople, the party of heroes, and even the villain. The appeal of Miitopia was to have a big RPG adventure where friends, family, and whoever else you wanted to create would fill Miitopia's world, making for a zany, handheld adventure. The Switch port introduced some new features to make returning to Miitopia a bit more palatable for repeat players. But at its core, both versions of the game play identically. So the question is Miitopia any good? Equip your gear, put on your game face, and let's turn the page to Miitopia for the Nintendo Switch. It's an ordinary, peaceful day in Miitopia, when our young hero, Silver, arrives in the town of Greenhorn. He passes through, greeting the various townfolk who are going about their day-to-day lives. However, this peace is short-lived, as the Dark Lord, Spamton, arrives. The Dark Lord possesses the terrible power to steal Mii's faces, put them over the innocent creatures of Miitopia, and turn them into horrible monsters. He wants to take their face off. Silver is attacked by the new creature, with no way to defend himself. Just when things are looking dire, the adventurer is granted miraculous powers, being given a class of his choosing, letting him fight back against the faced fiends. As Miitopia's only hope, our very reluctant hero sets out to defeat the Dark Lord and return all the stolen faces back to their rightful owners. Thankfully, Silver's not alone. Along the way, he'll meet several new companions who will lend their sword, magic, and microphone in the battle for peace. The big highlight of Miitopia, and what makes its fairly simple story memorable, is the implementation of the Miis themselves. The role of every character you encounter, from the heroes, Dark Lord, and NPCs, is played by the Mii of your choosing. The 3DS version uses the standard Mii Maker, but the Switch port introduces several new features that put it head and shoulders above the original. Miitopia for Switch allows players to add wigs and stickers to existing Miis, and the level of creativity these inclusions allow are mind-blowing. Browsing community creations for Miitopia is nothing short of amazing. Whether it's replicating art styles from different anime, or adding details to make the Mii resemble someone more photorealistic, the sky is the limit for character creation. Miitopia even allows you to download other players' creations for use in your own version of the game, which is great, but the way Nintendo implemented sharing is, well, it's just so Nintendo. There's no search feature or top downloaded list you can browse. Instead, the only way to download Miis is to enter another player's access code, which they'll need to share to look at their creations. Going through different access codes to find a character you may be looking for is a tremendous pain in the ass, and keeping track of all the codes is annoying. To add to the frustration, if a player shared their access code before Miitopia received an update and hasn't played the game since, that access code will no longer work. This has left a heap of Miis no longer accessible. Oh god, and going through the access codes from online forums is even more tedious now, because half of them don't even work anymore. I'm glad we have the ability to share our creations, but there are a million better ways they could have been implemented. Your enjoyment of not just Miitopia's story, but the game as a whole, will depend greatly on how much entertainment you can derive from seeing characters you like having silly interactions. If that's not something you care about, or think is only good for a handful of chuckles, you won't get much out of this experience. Speaking for myself, did I enjoy teaming up with the likes of Zero from Mega Man to help the kingdom ruled by Dr. Eggman, all while receiving guidance from the great sage, Xavier Renegade Angel?
Ooh, frittata.
Oh yes, very much so. I was a little disappointed Miitopia didn't use the text-to-speech voices from Tomodachi Life. Getting to hear the Miis actually say each other's names really enhanced the novelty of these interactions. Miitopia instead just has everyone speaking gibberish, which was a letdown. Still, I admittedly got a lot of enjoyment seeing a bunch of my favorite characters all together for one big, wacky adventure, keeping a smile glued to my face. Sadly, that enjoyment didn't carry over to the gameplay as much, as I found Miitopia offered very little meat, and what was there quickly became repetitive and boring. When selecting a Mii, you'll be asked to give them a personality and job. Jobs are your typical RPG classes, like the warrior, mage, and cleric, with some more unique ones thrown in for variety, such as the chef and pop star. Meanwhile, personalities will influence how the Miis act in combat, each with its own benefits and drawbacks. For example, Silver had the laid-back personality, which grants them the chance to become unusually focused, dealing bonus damage, or conserving some magic points when casting a spell. However, they also have the chance to hide behind an ally when they are the target of an attack, which will increase that ally's resentment, damaging their relationship. Relationships are another key aspect of Miitopia's gameplay. By having two Miis share a room at the end of a level, or use certain abilities to help a friend, Miis gradually improve their relationship, with each level unlocking more useful abilities to give the edge in combat. On the other hand, if Miis build enough resentment towards each other through random events, they'll temporarily start fighting with each other. When two Miis are fighting, they'll do things like get in the way of each other's attacks, take extra damage from attacks, or otherwise be much less useful in battle. The only way to end these disputes is by having the Miis share a room together a few times after each stage, or wait for a random event to take place where the two make up. You may have caught that I've been using words like random, possibly, or chance quite a lot when describing the different gameplay mechanics, and that's because, for the most part, the player gets very little control over most aspects of Miitopia. In battle, you may only choose the actions of your main hero. The other three party members will decide what they do on their own, and they don't always make the most optimal decisions, like wasting a powerful attack on an already weakened enemy, or not using a technique to help an ally in need. Add in all the random elements from personalities, status effects from enemies, and relationship abilities, the player gets very little choice as to what goes on in a given battle. On the one hand, this can make each battle feel very dynamic. The sheer number of combinations of jobs and personalities and how they blend together into a party allow battles to play out in a multitude of ways, making things unpredictable and exciting. But this unpredictability ultimately undermines the game by removing nearly any strategic depth fights could have had, and the player does a hell of a lot more watching than they actually do playing. There is some input in battle, like using sprinkles, which can heal a Mii's health and MP, as well as moving a Mii to a safe spot to heal from status ailments. But these moments are minimal, and the game is easy enough that these inputs are rarely necessary. Even outside of combat, you're mostly just sitting around. You select a stage on the overworld and watch as your Miis automatically walk down a track, sharing some banter before stumbling on a combat encounter or triggering a quirky event. The interactions between the Miis are the best part of Miitopia, with some sharp writing paired with the absurdity of whose mouth the words are coming out of. But my hands rarely need to be on the controller. At most, I'd need to choose one of two paths to take or choose a level, but otherwise you're just watching the Miis do their own thing. This led to gameplay quickly becoming boring. Battles were dynamic, yes, but they were also remarkably easy. and required virtually no thought on my end to complete, barring a few boss fights, which tested me a little more than not at all. Even buying equipment of all things was up to chance. Miitopia doesn't have a traditional item shop. Instead, you need to wait for the Mii to request money to buy the piece of equipment themselves. Even then, they have a chance of getting distracted and buying something else entirely. Each Mii can only buy one thing per rest, so you'll need to replay another stage before having the opportunity for the Mii to buy the equipment again. As I said earlier, this game is very easy, so a Mii falling behind a bit on equipment will hardly matter much. But it's just one of those things that's an unnecessary irritation when you could just let the player choose to buy the equipment themselves. The gameplay side of Miitopia failed to remain engaging past its opening hours. With that being the case, the entertainment value of the Miis needed to hold for the rest of the adventure. And for me, they didn't. An average playthrough of Miitopia takes around 30 hours to beat, and that runtime far outstays its welcome. The main story of Miitopia can be roughly divided into 4 acts. The first act is easily the strongest, having a small subplot about a love triangle with the princess of a kingdom. There are a bunch of side characters to this subplot, and they all get an introductory cutscene when you first meet them. These cutscenes are wonderfully comedic, using the silliness of the Mii's faces to get some big laughs out of me.
Finally, I look as pretty as I feel.
After this act though, Miitopia just stops doing this. The remaining acts have weaker subplots, less plot-relevant NPCs, and barely any cutscenes that make use of the side characters. It all just fails to live up to the quirkiness the first act sets up. Perhaps the most unfortunate part of the game's division into acts is how it affects your party. At the ends of Acts 1 and 2, the Dark Lord will kidnap your party members and use magic to seal away your hero's class, bringing you back to level 1. You'll then have to select a new class and have 3 new party members rejoin over the course of that act. New party members does put fresh faces to the adventure, pardon the pun, which is good, as the novelty of your previous party has likely begun to wear off by that point. However, this also resets all your class abilities and relationship bonuses, essentially forcing you to start from zero. The expanding arsenal of abilities from leveling up and raising relationships was one of the few things keeping the combat exciting. But now you're forced to start all over again, and relearn techniques you'll have already seen dozens of times in the previous act. You are granted 3 new jobs to select each time you reset, but they only change things around so much, especially if the classes in question don't interest you. It doesn't feel enough to justify the reset. When you reach the 4th act, you'll be reunited with your previous party members. This will grant you access to all 10 characters, letting you mix and match your party between them all however you wish. That's really cool, and having the full squad of 10 uniting is a damn good payoff. But when I finally got that payoff, I was already too burned out. Getting through Acts 2 and 3 with the game's basic combat and diminishing story, it doesn't feel worth playing through to reach that big moment. Miitopia is a game best played in short bursts, with long breaks in between. It has a very cozy vibe with funny dialogue that's good for a laugh. The simple gameplay also makes it very easy to flick on every once in a while to mess around for a bit, but it fails to hold players over long play sessions, and will quickly exhaust them with its paltry amount of substantial content. That said, if you enjoyed the 3DS version enough to double dip anyways, or you're hoping to know what makes the Switch version different, there's a handful of new features included alongside the enhanced Mii creator. The first is the horse, a new companion that joins the party early in the game. The horse is fine. You can build your relationship with it just like your other party members, and it can sometimes help out in battle. Its inclusion is nothing particularly special, just another element added to make combat a smidge more interesting than it was on 3DS. Second are outings. As you explore and help out townspeople, you'll sometimes be gifted outing tickets. These tickets can be given to a pair of Miis to deepen their bond. You'll also be shown a healthy amount of new interactions, which did put a smile on my face. I also like that these outings have background characters who are randomly selected from your saved Mii collection. so even if you haven't assigned a Mii as a specific character in story mode, they may still have a chance to make a brief cameo appearance during these outings. The environment these outings take place in are all brand new, created specifically for the Switch, and they're gorgeous, featuring vibrant backdrops at a higher resolution. These new locales are such an improvement from the others that it's almost distracting. They're of such a higher quality than the other environments that were upscaled from the 3DS, and they really stand out because of it. It almost makes you wish the rest of the game was enhanced using environments like these. Oh well. Miitopia is a fine game that overstays its welcome. It has some great dialogue that provides plenty of laughs, and the new customization features really brought Mii characters to a new level. Unfortunately, the actual gameplay side of things is bare, forcing the player to sit and watch more than it does actually play, and what's on offer fails to keep them engaged for very long. Good for a quick laugh every now and again, but not anything that will keep someone eagerly coming back for more. Miitopia will take the number 42 spot. Unable to surpass Final Fantasy for the PSP as the superior RPG. Nintendo brings the color and charm, but proper, refined battle systems will always seize the day. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate if you gave it a like to help give my channel a little boost. For those who played Miitopia, do you have any fond memories of your time with it? Maybe a fun party combination, or the NPC whose Mii fit the personality a little too perfectly? Leave a comment and share. I'd love to hear all the things that made your playthrough unique. Don't forget to stay to the end of the video to see what game our randomizer will select next. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Take care. May we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.